So, yeah, it's our new moon observance day, and I've just come off of 2 weeks of solitary retreat, more or less, and settling back into engagement with the community here. It's been a very wonderful opportunity to have this 2 weeks to pretty much set my own schedule and look at what I want to look at in terms of teachings and practice, and kind of organically go through the day, responding to whatever needs arise and whims for exploration come up. So I've really enjoyed that. Learned some new routines too because of the weather. We've had several spells during this past 2 weeks of extremely hot temperatures, sort of in the middle of one right now. And one of my favorite things to do during retreat is walking meditation in the afternoons. And when it's 105 degrees outside, that's a bit difficult, so to speak. So having to readjust that and actually finding some pleasure in learning that in the early evening hours, say after 6:30, when it's cooled down maybe to below 90, that I can actually get out and do some walking and not feel like I'm going to pass out. But also the feeling of increased energy that came with that routine of more walking later on than I usually do. So just having that opportunity to find new patterns that can be useful, adaptability, finding usefulness in just trying to be adaptable and not make an issue of circumstances that are beyond our control. One of the themes that's come to mind, part of the explorations of the past couple of weeks, just moving through or considering the qualities of knowing versus learning. The word that we use to translate the Pali word jnana as knowing, a quality that is different from the practice of learning. So knowing is a quality or a concept, in a sense, a word, a representation of a quality that's more heart-based, whereas learning is a quality that's more head-based. And we need both of them, of course, in the practice. But learning where to find the answer to what we're seeking in terms of an end of suffering. It's so easy to get caught in our usual way of trying to problem solve through learning, acquiring knowledge, conceptualizing, figuring out, planning, strategizing, those kinds of things. That's our general go-to way of dealing with difficulties. It's the way we've learned. And it can sometimes reap some benefits, but has very many limitations to it, because it's not based on really looking at the level of dukkha on a very deep level. It's just responding to try and get rid of it, rather than trying to really understand it. So there's lots of kinds of knowing in the Buddhist sense, and a lot of the words that are describing qualities of knowing derive from that root word of jnana. So we have jnana, which just is a broad-based term meaning knowing or knowledge sometimes. Then we have something like pajanati, which is direct knowing, so that we're looking beyond a conceptual experience more towards a direct experience of something, pajanati. And then there's sampajanya, with the same root in jnana, which is kind of even more exalted in a sense. It's a superlative. The sam in sampajanya is a superlative modification, so that it's clear knowing, sort of like super clear knowing, sampajanya, kind of an exalted form of knowing in terms of clarity. Or there's panya, which is knowing with wisdom or discernment. So there's more than that. There's other words that play off of the word jnana, but they all point towards heart experiences, heart understanding on a deeper level than conceptualization. So the level of conceptualization, the intellect, is described in the Pali by the word manas. But then the more broad-based kind of knowing, awareness, is described by the word citta. So sometimes you see the word mind translated for both, and it's kind of can be confusing, not knowing whether the word is manas or chitta, because they have very different qualities. So our one word translation for both of them can be sometimes confusing. So it's good to know the original of what you're looking at when you're using that word or hearing that word. But our kind of default mechanism, the impulse in our hearts, is to try and figure out an answer to problems. We have an experience of unsatisfactoriness, of suffering, and the go-to mechanism is to go straight to the conceptualization, the trying to figure it out on the level of thought as a way of relieving the suffering. And, I think we can all relate to that. Even during the regular part of the day, or even more so when we're sitting in meditation, a difficulty arises, a memory of a difficult interaction or frustrating situation in our lives, in the worlds around us, something that we feel is problematic or shouldn't be this way. And immediately the impulse is to start to try and think about it and try and unpackage it in our minds, trying to come up with a solution on the thought level, on the conceptual level, an approach to deal with it, to get rid of the suffering, to get rid of the pain, to make it right, to get what we want. And that's pretty much how we try and find contentment, try and find happiness, is try and find an end to the difficulties, is through this constant trying to rationalize it in some way, trying to come up with some sort of concretized approach, some plan, some response to the difficult situation, to that conversation that we had with somebody that was unsatisfactory, and the want to resolve that, the conversation that we'll have in the future, what I should have said, what I will say, or how I respond to this difficult world situation, or the plan that I have to make it all better, to make it all go away, to make it all perfect. We can spend a lot of our lives engaged in that activity, and we spend a lot of our time on the meditation cushion. I think at least some of us at some times caught up in that habit too. And if we look at it, I think most of us are aware of the unsatisfactoriness of that approach, or else we probably wouldn't be here. But we just see the relentless, the endlessness of that kind of an approach. It's like a dog chewing on a meatless bone. It's chew, trying to get some nourishment. Do they get any nutriment from that? Do they get any sustenance? No, but they don't know what else to do. All they reap is, as the Buddha says in his simile, is weariness and frustration. But the dog, not knowing any better, just keeps on doing it, and so do we. Such a strong drive, such a strong impulse. So we need to try and figure out some way to move the approach of looking at dukkha and trying to deal with dukkha from the head. We need to move from the head to the heart, from the thinking process, the conceptualization process, to the understanding on a deeper level, which is only found in the heart, mind, chitta. One of the ways to help make that transition, I think, is to really consider over and over again, when you catch yourself in that process, particularly in meditation, and it's very easy to see because it's very frustrating. You're looking to understand or to try and experience some peace, and what you get is this kind of relentless chattering mind and trying to find some sort of resolution. And it's painful. And we have to let that pain speak to us and inform us, and to ask ourselves a question. We use the thinking mind in a more fruitful way by asking an appropriate question, like is this getting me anywhere? Probably not. And then being willing to say, I think I need to make a change in how I'm dealing with this and how I'm approaching this wish to be free from suffering. And to be able to say, I don't think I'm going to be able to figure this out on this kind of level, on this kind of conceptualization level, this thinking process. The truth is that I don't know. I don't know. how to deal with this, at least with this kind of an approach. The answers aren't coming. And there's some freedom just in that acknowledgement, because you're asking yourself, in a sense, what's the truth right now? The truth is, I don't know. And that helps stop the whole nattering process. If we can find a way to just sort of admit that we don't know. And what's that like? That's a transition into the quality of the heart, the citta. Because you're asking a question that directs the mind out of the thinking process, out of the head, and more towards the heart. More from like, what can I do to get rid of this, to what's this like? And what's it like, am I trying to get rid of it? So just posing a question that takes us to the level of experience, even if it's a bit unpleasant or disconcerting, because we want to know, we want an answer. And it's hard for us to say, well, I don't have the answer, I don't know. But there's a lot of actual relief and release in admitting that and understanding that. In a way, it's verbalizing the First Noble Truth. There is suffering right here, right now. It's because I'm engaging in an approach that's not working. That's the truth. I don't know. So that begins a transition that allows us to look at a deeper level instead of trying to cognize the whole thing, conceptualize, come up with answers, the whole negotiation, planning, all of that stuff. We allow that to drop away. We drop the storyline and turn towards more heart qualities. What's underlying this? We go to a deeper level than the intellect, than the rational process. We go to a level in the heart, in the citta. And what we start to observe, what we start to see, are some of the fabrications that come through citta, through the heart, that deeper level of receptivity, of understanding. We see the different kind of patterns of response, the perceptions, the qualities of feeling tone. So perceptions and feelings, these are citta sankhara, fabrications from the heart, mental fabrications. And they're patterns that have been established over many, many, many lifetimes. And if we can start to look at them at that level, rather than trying to conceptualize and rationalize, then we're starting to make a dent in our confusion. We're looking at that level of well-established patterns of response, whether it's responding to a way that we're viewing an issue, viewing a person, some sort of entrenched habit, idea that we just keep on rolling around in, whether it's a mental habit of fear or anxiety response or anger response, these different kinds of patterns, sensual desire response, start to become more apparent. And we see our kind of go-to favorites of how we're conditioned as a way to try and relieve some of that suffering. So we learn to see how they manifest, how we experience them, and the feeling that comes along with it. Usually the feeling of, a pleasantness or unpleasantness, and our response to that, wanting to get rid of the unpleasant, wanting to get more of the pleasant. This is all exploring at the level of the citta sankhara fabrications that pass through awareness based on all the conditioning from the past. And we get to know these, and then we can start to look more broadly at just at the qualities of the mind itself, citta, the different broad qualities, like, whether there's constrictive mind states present that manifest, say, in terms of hindrances, sensual desire, aversion, all the confusion, delusion, anxiety, fear, states of mind. Just at the broad quality, what's present? What's the overall quality in the mind? Is it constricted? Is it expanded? Is it open? Is it narrow? What is the general overall quality of the heart and the mind at this point in time? This pure awareness, this quality, citta, takes on the colorings, takes on the mood that's passing through. It's a reflective kind of awareness. So we get to know these states of mind at a deeper level when we're looking at the heart rather than through the head. One of the most fundamental challenges, or one of the most fundamental delusions that we can see in the heart is this sense of self, this perception of me, of I, mine. And this is the overall deluding quality that manifests when we become more aware of it, when we examine the heart at this level. And we see how that complicates our difficulties even more. Because where there is this sense of I or me as an agent, that perception automatically goes towards trying to do something, trying to solve it again, and brings us back to the head. So that we have this fundamental delusion that there is I or me that can solve the problem and get rid of the pain, get what it is that we want. And that brings us right back into the head of planning and strategizing and conceptualizing. So this sense that there is a controlling agent is something that we also start to take a look at and see if we can start to dismantle some of the ways that controls our experience. And the more we're able to do that, through our contemplations on not self as the Buddha teaches them, and slowly look at the prison that perception keeps us in, little by little that starts to fade away, the process of self-effacement, little bit by little bit. And we start to realize, or we can realize, that it's not I or me that is the agent that can actually undo the stories, undo the defiled states of mind. But we can start to take refuge in the fact that it's the path that is what uproots these stories, uproots these defiled states of mind, these underlying tendencies. It's not me or mine or I that's in charge towards eliminating them. We engage with a path, and it's the path that does the work. As long as the path is in accordance with Dhamma, then it's the path that we start to take refuge in as the way out. And especially with that kind of understanding, as the sense of self starts to fade away, that's when we start to see the qualities of panya, of wisdom, that level of knowing, start to grow and to become more manifest and to flourish. We start to see the impersonality of things, the transience of things, and how we can really uproot the suffering at the level of the heart rather than trying to think it away. This is the arising of wisdom. There's a book that Luangpo Pasano gave to me a month or two ago, maybe. It's a very nice collection of teachings, spiritual reflections from a Canadian First Nations author who's passed away now. His name is Richard Wagamesi. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that. But he has a number of different reflections, and the philosophy behind them is a bit different from Buddhism, but some of the reflections are just pure gold. And one of them is regarding this quality of wisdom, and more or less what he says in this one reflection is that with the quality of wisdom, with wisdom arising, the experience is one of wonder. And that in the presence of wonder, the head has no answers. The heart has no questions. And I was really touched by that. Wisdom, the experience of wisdom is one of wonder, this kind of open, aware sense of awe almost, maybe not quite as strong as awe, but just this sense of wonder. And that in that experience, in that openness, the head has no answers. There's no need for answers. All the thinking, the conceptualizing, the strategizing, it just falls away. There's no need. The head has no answers, and the heart has no questions. The search is done, at least for that period of time. And there's just this sense of open wonder. So I think this is the fruition of moving from the head to the heart when we take it to its fullest extent. It's just the dropping away of all of these structures, all of these constructs. We just don't need to keep building them anymore because there's a pure, deep understanding at a very open, simple level. and it moves to the level of experience rather than concept. It's hard to put into words because words don't really apply. So what we're left with in the path, the exploration at the level of heart, is just this growing understanding of what's skillful or wholesome, what's unskillful or unwholesome. We have a moral sensitivity. I think that's the word that Ajahn Sucitto uses. In the heart, in the explorations of the heart, we're tuning into this level of moral sensitivity. Basically, just what is it that's arising? It's this knowing. We're looking at the level of experience, at the level of knowing, and we're examining the qualities of wholesome or unwholesome, kusala, akusala, skillful, unskillful. We know what brings suffering. We know what leads to the end of suffering in terms of these mental qualities, the different kinds of things that can arise at this level of the heart. And with the quietude that we develop in our contemplative practice, this is where we focus our attention, just at this very level, this level of moral sensitivity. And then we learn to turn our attention away from the unwholesome patterns, the unskillful patterns, sometimes with some assistance, trying to apply antidotes to the difficult ones, all the various contemplations of kindness and compassion, patience that counteract the unwholesome ones. And then we encourage those even more as we learn to see the true qualities that develop wisdom and that allow us to open to that sense of wonder. And that's where freedom is. That's where we experience a sense of release, of freedom for ourselves. And when we experience that level of freedom for ourselves, we also can offer that freedom from our stories also affects other people. So the freedom from our stories is good for ourselves, and it's good for the world around us. We don't project our stories onto other people, our ideas, our requirements. We've left them behind for ourselves. We don't need them, and we don't need to expect other people to fall into line with them as well. So it's a gift for ourselves and for everyone. So, this experience, turning from head to heart, allowing ourselves to see things clearly on a much deeper but more simple, basic level, true quality of knowing rather than our ideas about it, and allowing that to open naturally to that sense of wonder. We can become full of wonder. It's wonderful. So I'll leave that for reflection this evening.